It's time to make a mold of Kati's head, or the portrait I did of her head anyway. And I'm thinking about molds and how they have a lot in common with taking a photograph. Both processes, both capturing a photograph and making a mold, capture a moment in time, and they lock that moment into a new form. Obviously, the largest difference is the photograph is an illusion, and the physicality is generally very insignificant in relationship to a photograph. But with the mold, it creates a new physical duplicate of the original, or it translates an object of one material into another material, but in a manner that's a direct replication. This is something that obviously industry has taken advantage of to be able to produce proficiencies in manufacturing. And an artist can use the tool in a similar way, like they can increase production of their work. But I'm more interested in the mold as a tool when it allows sort of a freedom of play and a freedom of experimentation and risk-taking. It removes the preciousness that's inherent to rendering or modeling by hand, and the output that the mold can produce provides a sense of freedom for the artist to experiment. And this idea is related to my work that uses realistic paintings as material to be manipulated digitally. In that series of work, I paint realistically with watercolor and gouache, also sometimes digitally. And the act of doing that creates a strong memory with me and the thing that I'm observing. And then those paintings are scanned to become digital versions of the original work. My intent isn't to make digital prints or replicas that are the exact reflection of the painting, but instead it's taking that painting and thinking of it as a formation of memory, which is then turning that memory into material to be digitally manipulated. And the compositions that I produce are very removed from the original observation. And this process for me talks about the fragmentation of memory and the implications for experiencing life through screens. And other ideas about consciousness and mark making are embedded in that work, but this is sort of at the core. That idea of being able to replicate something that took a significant amount of time is similar to the way that I'm dealing with this mold making process, but now it's going from digital to physical. So the use of the mold with the new work will be handled similarly. The cast is going to become the material, not the result. Modeling the portrait is not the artwork. It's part of the process en route to discovering what the artwork will be. So if that's the case, then why is modeling the portrait important to me? It would obviously be a lot faster to take a mold directly off the person modeling, and this would translate the person's physicality into a new material. However, in going directly off the person, I'd be leaving out my observation. There's sort of a personal component that would be left out. Manifesting the likeness as filtered by my abilities to both see and manipulate clay would be missing from the work. And for this work, I want the cast material to be a representation of my observation. And so is this just me simply flexing skill? And I mean, skill is part of the equation, but I think it's only a component. Even if it was the main thing, celebrating skill isn't a bad thing, right? Like art at its best is a reflection of what it is to be human. And visually recognizing another person's face well enough to identify them is an integral aspect of who we are. I mean, seriously, there's an area in our brain, in the temporal lobe more specifically, that's dedicated for face recognition. And being able to do that well enough to replicate someone in another material digs at the core of what it is to be human. But it's not just that. It's not just a flex of skill. I'm also interested in actually the fallibility. By rendering the portrait myself, I'm inevitably going to fail at making an exact replica of the model. It's not going to be precise. It's going to involve the fallibility that I have as a human. And by making the sculpture instead of performing a life cast, the resulting work will contain both my abilities and inevitable failures at rendering the precise interpretation of my perception. The human who is sitting in front of me will only be mimicked in mud, not replicated. This is an important aspect of the work as I seek to layer ideas and processes to achieve something that delves deeper than narrative. I want to make something that stimulates contemplation of self and how we project, curate, filter, and construct our identities, both in reality and virtually. What questions reside at the tensions between real and virtual? Making the mold is a step towards something I don't want to simply replicate. I'm not exactly sure where the artwork will be yet, but I'm going to find out.